number 10. Black holes, incredibly scary, incredibly dark. And although that clip may not seem that scary, black holes are indeed terrifying considering what little we truly know about them. Not to mention, researchers believe there are roughly about 10 million of them in our solar system. I know our solar system is huge, but researching this, I didn't know there was 10 million of them coming for us. This is actual footage from the Hubble telescope in 2015. Black holes suck anything and everything in with their gravitational pull and emit enormous amounts of energy. No one even knows what's inside of one because, well, no one has been able to be sucked in one and come back to Earth and tell us all about it. So before we get into number 9, make sure you guys hit the like button on this video. It really helps us out. And head over to my Instagram at Atlanta Productions, because as soon as I get a hold of PlayStation 5s, I'm going to be doing giveaways. I'm going to try to get my hands on 5 of them. So make sure to go follow me at Atlanta Productions. And look for this contest picture and just tell me what games would you guys play. Alright, moving right along, number 9.
But you'd feel their effect if they were to hit the planet.
Okay, what is that?
Gamma ray bursts, or GRBs, are the most violent explosions in the universe.
So these things can happen when two neutron stars collide or when a black hole swallows one of the stars, but however it happens, life on Earth would not be able to survive gamma rays. Even just 1 second of these rays could do enough damage to wipe out the Earth. But luckily they're said to only happen in like once in every 10 million years. So the only question is, did one happen over 10 million years ago? Because are we due? Are we due for one? I don't think so. I'm hoping not. Next up, number 8.
The 1918 flu killed 675,000 Americans. 50 to 100 million people died worldwide.
Of course we have to throw this one on here. Well, pandemics are a serious way to wipe out the Earth. I mean, I feel like the Earth is being wiped out right now. A lot of us had a history lesson this year from the 1919 Spanish flu, and it's so crazy that 100 years later, it's happening again. And I'm not even sure if the Spanish flu shut down the entire world like how the world is being shut down today. I mean, when we're like 50 years from now, this is gonna be in our grandkids' history books. Absolutely insane that we're around for this. I mean, we were there for the 2008 recession. We're there for COVID-19. This is like a really hard lifetime, especially if you're from the 90s. We're going through a lot. And although most pandemics are said to be natural disasters, one thing this year has made us question is if this was a man-made pandemic. Is someone out there trying to control the population? Is biological warfare a real thing? I'll move right along in at number 7. Okay, what you just saw is a clip from a tsunami in Japan. This really happened. Tsunamis aren't anything new, but with climate change becoming more and more devastating to our home on Earth, if sea levels continue to rise because of ice melting globally, we can see a lot of our world underwater. It would definitely wipe out humanity and the entire Earth would become a modern day Atlantis. And I don't know about you guys, but I can't hold my breath for that long. Like after like 10 seconds, I'm tapping out. Number 6. Okay, you guessed it. It's an asteroid. I mean, not too crazy to think this could wipe out Earth, since it's been said to have been done before. You guys know about the dinosaurs, the dinos? Yeah, they were wiped out by an asteroid.
They now can't see what's headed their way, but they can feel it.
Number 5.
Right now, in the United States, one of the world's largest volcanoes is gearing up to explode. It's known as the Yellowstone volcano. And it's not just any regular volcano. Nope.
Okay, we all know that the Earth has many volcanoes, but there are some massive mountains that are ready to explode, and if they do, all of humanity would wipe out from the devastation. It may not be by melting everyone, but it would cause serious effects on our food crops, and it would block out the sun for several years. Is this real life right now? That would be an alternate reality. And moving along in at number 4, solar flares in today's world would seriously affect humans if one occurred again that was big enough. The last solar flare in 1859 ended up interfering with small-scale electronics. I mean, in today's society, we rely heavily on electronics for access. Think money to buy food, cars, news, media. I mean, we use it for communications. We use it right now to watch me. We could potentially be taken back hundreds of years to the dark ages and no way to Google ourselves out of it. I mean, a world without Google. I remember a few years without Google. Okay, no, I was too young, but I just can't imagine. Every single day, I'm like asking questions to Google that I need answers to. Tonight, I'm going home and I'm gonna ask Google what happens if there is no Google. Coming at number 3. Okay, so this one isn't exactly a natural disaster, but I had to put it on this list because it is very, very possible. Nuclear war. Considering countries having nuclear weapons, this is a pretty scary reality. A full-scale nuclear war would kill hundreds of millions of people directly, and the aftermath would do irreparable damages to the Earth. Nuclear winter is when the soot from the blast covers the Earth and effectively freezes it over. But these are all theories, and I don't want to personally live through one to find out what would really happen. Number 2, the sun. Well, this one looks happy and cute. I mean, it's depicted as a little baby here. Can anyone guess what show this is from? Leave your guesses in the comment section below. But in all seriousness, the sun is not a baby. In fact, it's really old. It's hella old. And an expanding sun would be the most disastrous way for humanity to end. We don't want Mr. Sun to get any bigger.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to roast!
The idea of an expanding sun is that it grows bigger as time passes on. The sun getting bigger means it would be in closer proximity to Earth, which would scorch us. I mean, you guys remember this scene from the Terminator? Alright, in at number 1, take a look at this clip. Overpopulation is a very real natural disaster that we're kind of living through right now. It is estimated that the Earth will be home to 10 billion people by 2050. We will still be alive. I mean, 2050, that's only about 30 years from now. The problem and why it all puts all of humanity at risk is because the Earth isn't getting any bigger and we're using up resources faster than ever before. If we can't feed our population or house our population, I mean, we're gonna be in pretty big trouble. Especially if one of these pandemics happen again, human beings can sometimes be the real virus.
Humans identify the closest with the virus. We expand non-stop and we have no stable means of not destroying ourselves without expanding to a new planet. It is not a question of what we do, it's a question of what we are.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have my personal least favorite one on this list, locusts. There are over 30 million known insect species that fall under 2 categories, either destructive or beneficial. Most insect species are very beneficial to our ecosystems, but there are about 600 species that are destructive, and if these 600 are left unchecked, they have the potential to ruin life on Earth as we know it. One of the most destructive species are the gross and disgusting locusts. Adult locusts are insatiable and able to eat their own body weight in food every day, and they're also able to travel great distances and reproduce very quickly. 2020 has already seen places being absolutely swarmed with locusts, like the swarm that hit northeast Kenya that was 3 times the size of New York City. Some of the other places that have been hit hard this year include regions in Ethiopia, Pakistan, India, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Yemen. Scientists say that climate change is one of the biggest influences in these outbreaks because the extreme heat, strong cyclones, and unusually heavy rains in the Arabic Peninsula are the perfect conditions for adult locust populations to thrive and grow. If this crisis doesn't get under control and continues to grow, this could have an extreme impact on food productions, food security, and the livelihood of millions of people who depend on their crops for income, as well as the spread of diseases that the bugs bring. And honestly, it would be my absolute nightmare to have all of those gross things flying around everywhere. In our number 9 spot, we have a supernova. Before I dive into this one, don't forget to like this video. A supernova is what happens after a star has reached the end of its life, which usually happens once or twice a century in the Milky Way and tends to happen closer to the center of our galaxy. The star Betelgeuse, which is in the Orion constellation, is a super red giant and nearing the end of its life. It could become a supernova at any point from now to the next million years. If a supernova happened too close to Earth, its radiation could severely damage our ozone layer, which would leave us totally exposed to the ultraviolet rays from the sun. It could also ionize nitrogen and oxygen in our atmosphere, which would create this sort of smog made out of nitrous oxide in our atmosphere. Nitrous oxide is what laughing gas is, so I'm not exactly sure what that would mean for humans. Heading on down to number 8, we have a rogue planet. There is a possibility that a rogue planet from another solar system could enter ours. A rogue planet is a planet that does not orbit a star, like how Earth orbits the sun. If this were to happen, it would be catastrophic. It would potentially alter all of our planet's orbits, and the bigger planet, the more of an effect it would have. Altering the planet's orbits would inevitably alter Earth's orbit as well, which could take us too close to the sun that we fry, or too far from the sun that we freeze, or even kick us out of our own solar system. Sometimes I forget that we're literally on just a huge floating rock. If all of this wasn't scary enough, a rogue planet could also crash into Earth because it's probably happened before. Around 4.5 billion years ago. An object around the size of Mars, called Theia, crashed into Earth, and that's how the moon ended up being created. If all of these other things happened, it would definitely end human life. Also, the Earth could become a rogue planet. Space is very confusing. There is said to be 2 rogue planets for every star in the Milky Way galaxy, which would lead me to the question, how many stars are in the Milky Way galaxy? Well, the answer is a lot. According to NASA, it is estimated at 100 billion on the low end and 400 billion on the high end. So at least double that for the amount of rogue planets, and you've got me feeling pretty stressed out. In our number 7 spot today, we have the potential cooling of the Earth's core. The Earth is surrounded by a magnetic shield called a magnetosphere, which is generated by the Earth's rotation. This shield is our protection from things like solar winds and high energy particles, and some researchers believe that it also deflects ionizing particles that come from the sun. Without this deflection, it is believed that these particles would wear away the Earth's atmosphere, which would lead to the end of life on this planet. As the Earth rotates, a thick shell of liquid iron and nickel, which is the Earth's outer core, swirls around the Earth's inner core, which is just a big hot ball of metal. This is all great and obviously works well for us, but what happens if the Earth's core cools down? Because it will happen. Hopefully not for billions of years, but scientists know it's going to happen sometimes. The outer core would become solid like the inner core, and that wonderful swirl we have will just stop, which will end the magnetosphere we have going on. With no magnetosphere, we have no protection from solar winds, and our atmosphere would be gone. This is what scientists believe happened on Mars around 3.7 billion years ago that caused its now very thin atmosphere. But the good news is that scientists are trying to find a way to restore Mars's atmosphere, and if they were able to figure it out with Mars, hopefully we can also figure it out if that were to happen on Earth. Moving on to number 6, we have a wandering star. When I first heard of a wandering star, I thought that it sounded like the cutest thing ever. But as it turns out, a wandering star really could be a recipe for disaster. A star that is wandering throughout our galaxy has the possibility of ending up a little too close to our sun, and could potentially find itself in the middle of the Oort cloud at the edge of our solar system. The cloud is extremely rocky, so if this were to happen, it would greatly increase the chances of a huge comet flying towards the Earth. It's pretty obvious why a huge comet hurtling towards Earth would not be in our best interest. At our 5th and halfway mark, we have the heliosphere and its potential to become weakened. The sun's wind and solar magnetic field has helped create this bubble-like region around our entire solar system, which is called the heliosphere, and it shields us from any sort of interstellar medium. The sun follows its own path through the Milky Way, and we follow the sun. The sun will lead us through different sorts of space climates, and sometimes we will enter parts with more or less interstellar gas. We are currently in a patch that is less dense, that was created by a supernova. When we leave the patch that we're in now, our heliosphere could end up being much less effective, which would leave Earth very exposed and vulnerable. It could potentially change our climate much more than what we're currently facing, which could make it impossible for any sort of life on Earth to continue. In our number 4 spot, we have a hypercane. So say an asteroid hit Earth and it didn't kill us all. Theoretically, that would be good, but we would still potentially have to face a hypercane, which is literally just a mega hurricane that could wipe us all out. There isn't a ton known about hypercanes, but apparently they form over superheated seas, which is exactly what the ocean would be like after an asteroid hit Earth, and they have crazy and terrifying winds. It is said that a hypercane could see the storm getting as high as 25 miles, and the winds could be as fast as the speed of sound. A hypercane would ruin the Earth's ozone layer, which would of course not be good for us. It is said that when the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs hit, there was a hypercane that really solidified their extinction. So between an asteroid hit, a hypercane, and a ruined ozone layer, this one really isn't looking good for us. Moving on to number 3, we have a year without summer. We have all heard of extreme volcanic eruptions and supervolcanoes that could wipe us all out, and if you haven't, make sure you watch part 1 of this video. But what would happen if the initial eruption didn't end all living beings? Well, it could potentially be similar to what happened in 1815 after Mount Tambora erupted. This volcanic eruption was one of the worst in our known history, and it hurled a ginormous cloud of ash into the stratosphere, which then blocked the sun's rays and caused a major temperature cool down and more weather distortions for the years to follow. This could happen to us again. If a major volcano erupts and the same thing happened, we could be facing much larger repercussions. Last time this happened, the world went a year without summer because of the change in climate. This would have unparalleled effects on our crops and agriculture, and with how large the world's population is and how difficult it is to feed everyone already, who knows what would happen? Not to mention how the lack of available food would lead to soaring prices that would be unsustainable for most to even be able to afford to eat. Also, after the 1815 eruption, there were droughts and floods in India that changed the ecology of the Bay of Bengal, which helped a new strain of cholera flourish that ended up killing millions. And in 2020, we know how quickly and devastating a new disease can be. In our number 2 spot, we have the reversal of Earth's magnetic shields. So we have the North Pole where Santa lives, and we have the South Pole where the penguins live, but what happens if our poles switched? Magnetically, I mean. Well, it's happened before, and it's going to happen again. The magnetic field of Earth is known to switch, and scientists know that the last time this happened was 773,000 years ago, but they're pretty stumped on figuring out exactly what causes this flip. Scientists have been able to use lava flows to get some information about the last magnetic flip. What they found is that around 795,000 years ago, Earth's magnetic dipole field began to collapse and there was an excursion, which is when the magnetic field doesn't totally collapse in reverse, but it is very weak compared to its original strength. After a slight recovery, the field ends up collapsing and ended up switching orientations, which results in the polarity reversal. It's all very confusing and science-y, and I'm sure you're all wondering what this means for life on Earth. Well, scientists believe we are approaching the next reversal period, and when we go into that excursion part, like I mentioned before, where the magnetic field gets really weak, we will be way more exposed to cosmic rays, which can be extremely damaging to all life on Earth. There isn't a ton that is known about this whole process, and its timeline is greatly debated among the scientists who research it. In our number 1 spot today, we have climate change. Okay, so this one is more man-made than natural, but it still definitely deserves a spot on this list. Climate change is a super complex thing, and like I've said many times, I am not a scientist, but I'll do my best to explain what this means for us. Basically, scientists are saying that if we don't find alternate, less wasteful ways of doing things, the temperature of the Earth will rise by 5.4 degrees Fahrenheit by the year 2050. This might not seem like a lot, but it will have a huge impact on our planet. To name a few, the world's ice sheet would be gone, droughts would kill most of what's left of our Amazon rainforest, which is one of our biggest carbon offsets, wildfires would ravage our land, 1/3 of the world's land would turn into desert, which would collapse entire ecosystems, starting with our coral reefs. This isn't even everything that would happen. Our planet and the life on it lives in this incredibly delicate balance, and just a few small changes can ruin life as we know it. Scientists say we have 10 years to reverse climate change, or else we might end up getting to that worst case scenario. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot today, we have the Yellowstone National Park supervolcano. Yellowstone National Park is located in the western United States and is a beautiful park with lakes and canyons and mountain ranges. While the word supervolcano sounds very cool, it is actually a pretty terrifying concept, and Yellowstone National Park sits right on top of one. If this volcano wasn't currently active, it would be no big deal, but that is not the case here. The last time the volcano erupted was 630,000 years ago, which I know is a very, very long time, but the scientists who study volcanoes have discovered that this supervolcano erupts every 600 to 700,000 years. This means that it really could just decide to erupt any day from today to long after we're all dead. I sure am hoping for the latter. The eruption of this volcano could end human civilization, so let's hope that it can hold out to that 700,000 year mark so we don't have anything to worry about. Moving on to number 9, we have the Helena Slump. This unstable slope is located just south of Hawaii's biggest island, and every so often it creates a landslide that is the cause of tsunamis. There is evidence that around 120,000 years ago, there was a really large landslide on the slope that caused a tsunami over 400 meters high. The most recent tsunami caused by the slump was in 1975, and it managed to reach all the way to California. The slump could potentially drop 12,000 cubic meters of rock into the Pacific Ocean, which would create a mega tsunami that would travel through the Pacific Ocean and even reach the western seaboard in just a few hours. This would totally ruin any coastal communities. While scientists are pretty sure we have a while until there's a landslide on the slope so big that it generates a mega tsunami, the Earth is always changing, and all it would take would be a strong jolt from an earthquake, so we never really know. Moving on down to number 8, we have heat waves. While I enjoy a nice hot summer day, there certainly is a limit. Because of climate change, we are facing changes in temperatures that could be detrimental. Heat waves are becoming increasingly more common, and if greenhouse gas emissions aren't significantly decreased, we'll keep seeing these temperature changes. There are many threats that extreme heat poses, but it is also one of the leading causes of weather-related deaths. Some other threats include wildfires, threats to agriculture and livestock, and it can even lower the ability of power transmission transmission lines, which could potentially lead to unreliable electricity. Even just a few degrees is cause for concern, so maybe it is time we change our ways and get the big corporations who are responsible for the majority of our emissions on board to drive us towards a brighter and cooler future. Headed on to our number 7 spot, we have another supervolcano, but this time we're headed into Lake Toba in Indonesia. The last time this supervolcano erupted was roughly 74,000 years ago, but it is said that the eruption was so devastating it almost wiped out humans entirely. To think that we could not be here watching this video right now is crazy. The reason that the volcano eruption was so devastating is because it is believed that after it erupted, it sent the world into an ice age, cooling some regions as much as 15 degrees Celsius. I would have thought the aftermath of a volcano would do the opposite, but I am very obviously not a scientist. While people who are actually scientists believe that we still have a while until a large eruption, the volcano's magma chamber is still very active. Continuing on in our number 6 spot, we have a potential phosphorus shortage. This is something I never thought I'd ever have to think about, but alas. For hundreds of years there has been a worry of not being able to feed Earth's ever-growing population, and near the turn of the 20th century, this really came to a head because of the lack of nitrates and ammonia available. Luckily, the German chemists Fritz Haber and Karl Bosch were able to come up with a process that takes gas from the air and turns it into fertilizer. Problem solved, right? Well, yes, until we began to realize our shortage of phosphorus. Our bodies need phosphorus for things like moving around energy and to build DNA and cells. While we aren't going to run out of phosphorus tomorrow, we are about 30 to 40 years away, but the push for biofuel could push us even closer to the edge. This is really stressful because biofuel is so important and we need to start using it more, but then it will create this phosphorus problem. Hopefully our scientists will be able to find a solution for both of these problems and save us. At our halfway point, coming in at number 5, we have the thermohaline circulation and its potential shutdown. There are a lot of these cool built-in systems that Earth has that we don't even realize are happening around us, or at least I don't. Some of these systems, if altered, could create climate changes for centuries. Scientists have been warning us about climate change for years, and this is just one of the many reasons why. If the Arctic ice melts too quickly and the new freshwater spreads across the North Atlantic Ocean, it will shut down a looping global current that is vital to the Earth's climate called thermohaline circulation, or THC. Not that kind of THC. The THC is run off a mix of heat and density, and the circulation of it helps transport heat around the world. As an example, Atlantic surface waters warm up near Florida and then flow northeast towards Europe. This is part of the reason why London has a fairly mild climate, even though it's on the same latitude as the very cold Calgary, which is in Alberta, Canada, and also Kiev in the Ukraine. If the THC shut down, it could cause a sort of mini ice age. The THC has shut down before, so it is possible that if it did shut down, it would eventually be up and running again, but the worst case scenario is that a mini ice age combined with our already changing climate could be detrimental to the human race. Moving on to number 4, we have the potential of an asteroid hitting Earth. We all know, or at least have heard, that the dinosaurs were wiped out by an asteroid. If an asteroid were to hit Earth now, there is a good chance it would have a similar effect, but this time on humans. There have been dozens of asteroids that have nearly missed Earth, and a lot of them have been known and had their paths calculated beforehand to ensure our safety. But there also have been a lot of near misses that weren't seen until right before, or sometimes even after the asteroid had already passed. There have been 5 near misses in 2020 alone. In 2028, there's an asteroid called 1997 XF11 that will come extremely close to hitting Earth, but as of right now, scientists believe that it will miss the planet. If this asteroid were to hit Earth, it would be a mile-wide asteroid hitting Earth at about 30,000 miles per hour, which is similar to a 1 million megaton bomb, which would most likely wipe out most of all the life on Earth. So let's hope that doesn't happen, or Elon Musk can send us to Mars by 2028. Heading to our number 3 spot, we have a potential earthquake. Back in 2014, there was an earthquake in Chile that had a magnitude of 8.2. The earthquake was caused by the meeting of 2 of Earth's continental plates, the Pacific Plate and the Nazca Plate. But scientists believe that this earthquake could have been the start of something bigger. The previous earthquake was called a megathrust, and it was pretty bad. It triggered landslides, cut power, and created a tsunami, but it is believed that this earthquake only released 1/3 of the built-up tension between the plates. That could mean that an even larger, more deadly earthquake could be headed for the same area, and it is expected to happen sometime soon. Headed down to number 2, we have the potential for solar storms and a solar flare. The sun is the center of our universe and is one of the most important things for human life. The sun goes through its own phases and has increases and decreases in activity. When the sun is very active, it can cause a solar flare. A powerful flare can be accompanied by coronal mass ejection, which is a billion-ton cloud of magnetized plasma. While this sort of process happens sometimes, it is usually okay for us and we would never even know, but there is a possibility for it to be so huge that it really impacts us. What this could mean for us is that the electromagnetic pulses that are generated by it could cause terrible damage or even knock out most of our electronics. One of the worst times this happened in our recent history was in 1921, and it ended up knocking out the US telegraph service. But with how much technology we have today, if something similar were to happen, it could knock out many satellite systems, which would ruin all global communications, the internet, and even GPS. It would be absolute chaos if that happened. While we never really know what is going to happen, it is said that there is only a 12% chance of this happening in the next decade. I would prefer a 0% chance, but I guess 12 will have to do. And in our number 1 spot today, we have what is known as the big one. At the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, just off the west coast of North America, there is a subduction zone. A subduction zone is an area where 2 tectonic plates have collided and one begins to slide underneath the other, curving down into the mantle, which is the hot layer underneath the crust of the Earth. At this specific subduction zone, the Pacific Ocean floor is being pushed under North America. It is actually moving 40 millimeters a year, which doesn't seem like a lot, but that's kind of crazy. What's not so good about this though is that the upper part, or the North American part, is actually stuck and is being compressed, and at some point it is going to need to release all that built up pressure. This is where the big one comes in. The release of the pressure is going to be an earthquake, but it's going to be huge, with a potential magnitude of 9. This could potentially cause the coastal region to sink up to 2 meters and move horizontally up to 30 meters. After the shaking of the earthquake is over, it will be time for the tsunami. I'm not sure if you guys remember the 2011 earthquake that caused a tsunami in Japan, but they are saying that this one could be even bigger than that. And that is not to make the 2011 tsunami seem small, because it was absolutely catastrophic. Around 7 million people will be affected if this happens, from Vancouver to Seattle, Tacoma, and Portland.